Ocean, Dr. Vogue, Rod, the gods.
There go Dr. Vogue, bragging about being broke again. Beautiful Kitsuki pottery amongst the shattered men. Matter bands when you apply enough pressure. Pleasure never meant the sandy heart. So rip these words apart, leave them scattered on the battlefield, legs and all.
So Wang Jin helped his mother dismount. He then carried the luggage and grabbed hold of the horse's reins and followed the workhand inside to a courtyard for threshing wheat. There, he put down his luggage and tied the horse to a willow tree. They then went to a thatched hall to meet the squire. The squire looked to be over 60. His hair and beard had all turned white.
Damn,
he wore a hood and a straight-cut, loose-fitting gown tied at the waist with a black silk sash. On his feet, he donned a pair of tanned leather boots. Wang Jin bowed, but the squire quickly stopped him. Sir, there's no need to bow. Please get up. You are travelers and must have endured hardships. Please have a seat. Once his guests were seated, the squire asked, "Where are you coming from? What brings you here?" "My last name is Zhang," Wang Jin answered, keeping his real identity a secret. "We used to live in the capital, but after losing all our money, we couldn't continue our business, so we're going to stay with relatives in Yan'an Prefecture. We tried to cover too much ground today and missed an inn, so we hope we can stay here for the night. We will leave in the morning, and we'll be sure to pay for the lodging." "Oh, no problem at all," the squire said. "Who among us travels with a house in tow? I don't suppose you and your mother have had dinner yet." So the squire now ordered his men to prepare a meal. Soon, a table was set up in the hall, and a workhand came in with a tray that held 4 vegetable dishes and a plate of beef. He set them down on the table and poured some wine. "We have little to offer except crude country fare. I hope you don't mind," the squire said. "Oh, we are putting you through too much trouble," Wang Jin said.
Country fare, he means he can only roll the blunt in the
backwoods. Your immense kindness. "Please, say no such thing," the squire insisted. "Let's drink." After a few cups of wine, the food was served and eaten. After the dishes had been cleared away, the squire showed them to their guest room. "May I trouble you to stable and feed the horse that my mother was riding?" Wang Jin asked. "We will pay for the feed, of course." "No problem at all," the squire said. "We also have horses and mules. I'll have my men lead your horse to our stable and feed it along with our own animals. Don't worry about the feed." Wang Jin thanked the squire and carried his luggage into the guest room. A workhand lit a lamp and brought hot water for the guests to wash their feet. The squire then went back to his own quarters. Wang Jin and his mother thanked the workhand, shut their doors, and went to sleep. The next morning, it was past dawn, but Wang Jin and his mother had not yet emerged from their room. As the squire passed by, he could hear someone groaning inside. "Sir, you have slept past dawn. It's time to get up," the squire said from outside. Wang Jin stepped out from the room, greeted the squire.
So I think this is that automotive scrap. I gotta go get that automotive scrap. Holy shit. Everything's so...
"Who's groaning?" the squire asked. "To tell you the truth, my mother was exhausted from riding and started having chest pains last night." "Well, in that case, don't worry yourself," the squire told him. "Stay here for a few more days. I have a prescription for chest pains. I'll have a workman go to the county to get the medicine for your mother. Tell her to not worry and just rest." So Wang Jin and his mother stayed at the squire's manor. After 5 or 6 days, his mother had recovered, so Wang Jin was getting ready to hit the road again. As he walked to the stable to check on their horse, he noticed a young man hanging out in a clearing. This young man was stripped to the waist, revealing blue dragon tattoos all over his body. His face was as round as a silver platter. He looked to be about 18 or 19, and he was practicing with a staff. Wang Jin, being a drill instructor, couldn't help but stop and watch. After observing for a while, he said to himself, "The style is not bad, but it has weaknesses. It won't beat anyone who has real skills." The young man heard that, and he became enraged. "Who the hell are you? How dare you mock my skills?" he shouted angrily. "I have had 7 or 8 well-known teachers, and you think I can't beat you? Do you dare to have a go with me?" Before the youth had finished speaking, the old squire arrived and scolded him.
I see.
"Don't be rude." "But this bastard is mocking my skills with the staff." The squire now asked Wang Jin, "Sir, do you know how to handle weapons?" "A little bit," Wang Jin said. "May I ask how this young man is related to you?" "Oh, he is my son." "In that case, if he is eager to learn, then how about I give him a few pointers?" "Oh, that would be great," the squire said as he told the young man to come pay his respects to his new teacher. But yeah, the young man wasn't having any of that. "Pa, don't listen to this rogue's nonsense. If he can beat my staff, then I'll have him as my teacher." "If the young master won't take it too seriously, then we can have a go, just for fun," Wang Jin offered. Well, the young man was definitely taking it too seriously. He was all amped up and ready to rumble. He whirled his staff over his head like a windmill and said, come on, come at me, if you have the nerve." But Wang Jin just smiled and did not make a move. The squire said, "Sir, if you are willing to teach my son, then why not have a go?" "I am afraid that I might hurt him, and that won't look good," Wang Jin explained. "Ah, no problem," the squire reassured him. "Even if you break his hand or leg, he would have brought it upon himself." "Then forgive me," Wang Jin said as he walked over to the weapons rack and picked out a staff. He stepped into the clearing and assumed a stance. The young man sized him up quickly and charged with staff in hand. Wang Jin turned and retreated with his staff trailing behind. The young man kept charging. Suddenly, Wang Jin stopped, turned, and brought his staff down through the air. The young man saw it coming and lifted his staff to parry the blow, except there was no blow coming down through the air. Wang Jin's move was a bluff. He now swiftly pulled his staff back and thrusted it against the young man's chest. With just one poke, the young man's staff went flying, and he fell flat on his back. Wang Jin quickly tossed his own staff aside and helped the young man up while apologizing. The young man scrambled to his feet, pulled over a stool, asked Wang Jin to sit down, and then kowtowed to him. "I have studied with many teachers, and yet it was all worthless," he said. "Master, I have no choice but to ask for your instruction." Wang Jin replied, "My mother and I have imposed on you for days. We have no way to repay your kindness, so it's only right that I shall do my best." The squire was delighted and told his son to go get dressed, and then they all sat down in the rear hall. The squire ordered his workmen to slaughter a sheep and prepare wine, food, and fruits. He also invited Wang Jin's mother to join them. After all 4 of them sat down, the squire stood up and offered a toast. "Master," he said to Wang Jin, "your skills are so impressive. You must be a drill instructor. My son was blind to not recognize your abilities." "One does not lie to an honest man," Wang Jin said with a smile. "My last name is actually not Zhang. I am Wang Jin, a drill instructor for the Imperial Guards in the capital. I play with weapons all day long. But we recently got a new marshal, Gao. He took a beating from my father once, and now he is commanding the Imperial Guards. He held an old grudge against me. I was under his command, so I couldn't stand up to him. So my mother and I were fleeing to Yan'an Prefecture to find a living with old General Zhong. We did not expect to end up here and run into you and your son, and to receive such hospitality, not to mention treatment for my mother's ailment. We have really imposed on you too much. Since your son is willing to learn, then I will do my best to teach him. What he has learned in the past is just flash. The moves look good, but they are useless in a real fight. I will teach him from scratch." Hearing this, the squire told his son to bow again to his new teacher, which the young man promptly did. The squire then told Wang Jin,
well, we'll just get some fuel and reduce the
always
6, I guess.
resided here on the border of Huayin County. In front of us lies Huayin Mountain. This village is called the Shi family village, and it has about 300 to 400 households, and all of them belong to the Shi clan. My son, Shi Jin, has never taken to farming and only likes to play with weapons. His mother lectured him time and again, but to no avail, and she got so upset that she died. So I can only let him do whatever he wants and have spent a lot of money on teachers for him. I also hired a skilled tattoo artist to decorate his arms and chest with 9 dragons. Because of that, he is known throughout the county as 9 Dragons Shi Jin. It's great to have you here. Now you can complete his training. I will, of course, reward you handsomely. "Sir, don't worry," Wang Jin said. "If that is your wish, then your servant will teach him well." So, from that day forth, Wang Jin and his mother stayed at the manor. Each day, Shi Jin would ask Wang Jin to teach him how to use the 18 weapons. Now, these 18 weapons are considered the standard repertoire of Chinese martial arts. There are no exact English translations for some of these weapons, but they include things like lances, bows, bludgeons, truncheons, swords, hooks, hatchets, axes, and the like. And while Wang Jin and Shi Jin were busy practicing, the old squire went to the county seat to tend to his duties as a chief of the ward. The days flew by, and soon half a year had passed. Shi Jin had relearned the 18 weapons properly from the ground up, and had become quite skilled in all of them, thanks to Wang Jin's instruction. Seeing this, Wang Jin began thinking to himself, "This place is nice, but it's not getting me anywhere." So one day, he told Shi Jin that he was taking his leave and resuming the stalled journey to Yan'an Prefecture. Shi Jin, of course, would not hear of it. "Master, just stay here," he told Wang Jin. "I will take care of you and your mother for the rest of your lives. Won't that be great?" "Brother," Wang Jin said, "thank you for your kindness. This is a very nice place, but I am afraid that if Marshal Gao's men come looking for me here, you will get pulled in as well, and then we would both be in trouble. I am determined to go to Yan'an Prefecture and serve in the garrison under old General Zhong. It's a post on the border, and they need men. I can make a fresh start there." Despite much pleading from Shi Jin and the old squire, Wang Jin's mind was made up. So they resigned themselves to preparing a feast for him and his mother. They also presented him with a platter with 2 bolts of satin and 100 taels of silver. And just for your reference, 1 tael in the Song dynasty was the rough equivalent of about 1.3 ounces. So 100 taels of silver was more than 8 pounds. That was literally a nice chunk of change. The next day, Wang Jin packed his bags, prepped his horse, and he and his mother bid goodbye to their hosts and set off toward Yan'an. Shi Jin had a workman carry his master's luggage while he personally escorted Wang Jin for about 3 miles, unable to let his teacher go. When it finally came time to part ways, Shi Jin did so with tears in his eyes. Nonetheless, they said goodbye to each other, and Wang Jin and his mother headed toward Yan'an and out of our narrative. So instead of following Wang Jin on his journey, we're now going to follow Shi Jin. After bidding goodbye to his teacher, he returned to the manor and resumed working out every day. Shi Jin was in the prime of his youth, and he had no wife, so he would get up in the middle of the night and work on his fighting skills. During the day, all he did was practice riding and archery behind the house. Less than 6 months later, though, Shi Jin's father fell ill and became bedridden. Doctors from near and far were summoned, but no one could do anything for the old squire, and soon he was dead. Shi Jin set about preparing a coffin and hiring Buddhist monks to hold 7 services, one every 7 days. He also hired some Taoist priests to chant prayers to ensure his father's soul went straight to heaven, and they conducted more than 10 such services. Finally, he picked an auspicious day on which to bury his father.
Well, that's fine.
All 300-some households from the village came out to mourn the old squire, who was buried in an ancestral cemetery on a hillside west of the village. Now that his father was gone, the affairs of the manor fell to Shi Jin. Except, remember that he had no interest in farming, and that did not change.
But I have no interest in...
From that point on, there was no one to look after the household affairs or the land. Shi Jin just spent his days looking for sparring partners. In this way, 3 or 4 months soon passed, and it was now the middle of June, and the heat was unbearable. One day, Shi Jin was bored with nothing to do, so he sat on a folding chair under a willow tree by the threshing ground in his manor, seeking relief from the heat. From across the way, a breeze blew through the trees, prompting him to cry out, "Nice breeze!" Just then, he spotted someone peeking around. "What's this? Who is that looking around my house?" Shi Jin shouted as he jumped up and followed the man behind a tree. It turned out to be somebody he knew, a rabbit hunter named Li Ji. "Why are you sneaking around my manor?" Shi Jin demanded. "Are you spying on me?" Li Ji came forward and greeted Shi Jin respectfully and said, "Oh sir, I was just looking for your servant, Shorty Qiu, to go have a bowl of wine. I saw you sitting there, so I did not dare to intrude." Shi Jin now asked, "I do have a question for you. You used to sell us game quite often, and I have never underpaid you. So why have you stopped? Do you think I have no money?" "I would never dare," Li Ji said. "It's just that I haven't caught any game, so I haven't come." "Nonsense! Huayin Mountain is huge. How can there not be any rabbit or deer to hunt?" "Sir, you don't understand," Li Ji explained. "Recently, a group of bandits have occupied the mountain and set up a fort there. They have assembled some 700 men and more than 100 good horses. Their leader is called Zhu Wu, nicknamed the Resourceful Strategist. The second in command is called Chen Da, the Stream-Leaping Tiger. The third chieftain is named Yang Chun, the White Flower Serpent. They have been robbing and pillaging, and the authorities in Huayin County can do nothing to stop them except put out a bounty of 3,000 strings of coins. But who would dare to go after them? That's why I haven't dared to go to the mountain to hunt. So where would I find game to sell?" Hearing this, Shi Jin replied, "I have heard that there were bandits, but I didn't know they have become such a big deal. They will no doubt make trouble for me. Okay, if you do find game, bring some to me." After Li Ji took his leave, Shi Jin returned to the manor and thought to himself, "Those bandits have gotten so bold, they will likely attack our village at some point." So he ordered his men to slaughter and cook 2 water buffaloes and bring out some good homemade wine. He then burned paper replicas of gold and silver ingots as an offering to heaven and prayed for good luck. Next, he sent his workmen to go invite all the households in the village to his manor. They assembled in his thatched cover hall and sat down according to age. As the workmen served everyone wine, Shi Jin said, "I have heard that there are 3 bandit chiefs on Huayin Mountain. They have assembled some 700 men and are robbing and pillaging. Since they are getting big, they will bring trouble to our village sooner or later. So I have invited you all here to discuss it. When those bandits come here, you all get ready. My manor will sound the alarm, and you all grab weapons and come help us. And if any of you have trouble, we will do the same for you. and help each other defend the village. If the bandits come, I will take care of it." To this, everyone said, "We are just farmers. Young master, you make the decisions. When you sound the alarm, who would dare to not answer?" They then proceeded to feast on buffalo burgers and Shi family microbrews before dispersing back to their homes to prepare weapons and such. From that day forth, Shi Jin reinforced the gates and walls of his manor and put everything in order. He issued suits of armor and had the weapons and horses all prepped to deal with a bandit raid. So now, let's skip on over to Huayin Mountain, where we find the three aforementioned bandit chiefs sitting in their fort talking about stuff. Their leader, Zhu Wu, the resourceful strategist, was no fighter, but what he lacked in brawn, he made up for with brain. One day, he said to the other two chieftains, Chen Da and Yang Chun, "I have heard that Huayin County is offering 3,000 strings of coins for our capture. I worry that when the authorities come and we must fight them, we would not have enough provisions. Why don't we go pillage some food and store it here at the fort so that we can hold out in case government troops come calling?" "Quite right," said Chen Da, the stream-leaping tiger. "Let's go demand grain from Huayin County and see what they'll do about it." But Yang Chun, the white flower serpent, disagreed. "Let's not go to Huayin County. Let's go to Pucheng County instead. That is a sure thing." "But Pucheng County has few people and even less money and grain," Chen Da said. "We should go raid Huayin County. The people there are prosperous, and they have lots of money and grain." "But brother, you haven't heard," Yang Chun countered. "If we go to raid Huayin County, we would have to pass by Shi family village. That 9 dragons Shi Jin is dangerous and should be left alone. He would never let us pass." But Chen Da just scoffed. "Brother, you are so timid. If we can't even pass through a village, how can we resist government troops?" "Brother, don't underestimate him," Yang Chun cautioned. "He is very skilled." Zhu Wu now chimed in and said, "I too have heard that Shi Jin is a real hero and has real skills. Brother, do not go." But all this talk just riled up Chen Da even more. "Shut your damn mouth," he cried. "Stop talking up others and putting ourselves down. He's just a man too. Does he have 3 heads and 6 arms? I don't believe you." Chen Da then shouted to his men, "Prepare my horse. We will go attack Shi family village first, and then take Huayin County." Zhu Wu and Yang Chun tried time and again to talk their comrade out of his hot-headed plan, but Chen Da refused to listen. He donned his armor and mounted his horse. Then he called up about 150 men, and they beat their gongs and drums as they set off for Shi family village. To see how these bandits will fare against Shi Jin, tune in to the next episode of the Water Margin podcast. Also, on the next episode, we will witness the fallout of the ancient Chinese equivalent of an email hack and appreciate the importance of good information security. So join us next time. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Water Margin podcast. This is a supplemental episode. In episode 3, we met Gao Qiu, a riffraff who rose to commander of the Imperial Guards thanks to catching the Emperor's favor with his impressive skills and ancient Chinese football game called Cujü. That particular plot point gives me an opportunity to delve a little bit more into a game that, over its history, was played by everyone from emperors to riffraffs and prostitutes, and rhapsodized about and frowned upon by some of China's greatest poets. Before we continue, I want to put out there the disclaimer that I am by no means a historian or expert. The information I present here is what I have been able to find over the course of my research for this episode. I know that some of you out there are actual historians, so if something I mention here doesn't sound right, please feel free to write and let me know. I am happy to correct the record. So anyway, the name Cuju is made up of two characters. The first character, Cu, means to kick, while the second character, Ju, means ball, so the sport is literally called kickball. There are several theories on the origins of the game. Some speculate that it began in the Paleolithic age, when people threw stone balls for hunting, practice, and entertainment. Another theory says the sport came from the time of the Yellow Emperor, a mythical sage king from the 3rd millennium BC, as something his soldiers did to celebrate victory in battle. But I think that theory should be accompanied by the disclaimer that the Yellow Emperor pretty much gets credited with inventing Chinese civilization and basically everything in it. And then, another theory says the sport began in the Shang dynasty, which reigned from 2070 to 1600 BC, as part of a ring dance. The fourth theory, and the one that seems to have the most solid evidence, is that it started in the Warring States period, which ran from the 5th to 3rd century BC. As I touched on in episode 3, the first recorded mention of Cuju was in reference to this period. More specifically, it was in a text known as the Strategies of the Warring States. Now, we don't know who wrote this text or when. In fact, it's believed that the text is a compilation of writings by multiple authors over different time periods. We do know that the editor of the text was a Han Dynasty scholar who lived in the 1st century BC. In any case, the tidbit from this text that's relevant in the context of Cuju is a reference from the chapter on the Warring States Kingdom of Qi. In describing the people in the Qi capital, it's said that they all played various instruments, engaged in cock and dog fighting, amused themselves with a particular board game that was all the rage at the time, and lastly, played Cuju. That brief passage formed the basis for FIFA to say on its History of Football webpage that, quote, "The very earliest form of the game for which there is scientific evidence was an exercise from a military manual dating back to the 2nd and 3rd centuries BC in China," end quote. I'm sure that declaration worked wonders for the feelings of the Chinese people, given our inclination for claiming to be the first to invent everything of importance. Of course, it's not like no other civilization could independently conceive of the notion of kicking a round object to and fro for recreation and exercise. However, and however early the game of Cuju began, we know that in addition to being a form of recreation, by the Warring States period, it also served as an exercise to help soldiers stay fit. By the Han Dynasty, which started in the 200s BC, it continued to be a mainstay within the military, but it also began spreading to the ruling class and the aristocracy. Liu Bang, the founder of the Han Dynasty, was apparently quite the Cuju addict and promoted the sport. The imperial household began holding Cuju matches in the palace and even built facilities specifically for the sport. These ancient arenas were described as rectangular fields surrounded by walls, and they were called Ju cities or ball cities. Spectators sat on the south end of these stadiums facing north. There are competing theories on how the game was played during the Han Dynasty. Some think a lot of physical contact was allowed, as the two teams vied to control the ball and try to kick it into one of the other team's 6 goals. Another theory thinks that there weren't any goals at all, and that you won by basically getting away from the other team. The game also took on a performative aspect during this time. There's one format where players would show off their ball control skills to a drum beat. They could use pretty much every part of their body except their hands, and they would do moves like controlling the ball with their feet and their knees, kicking it while being airborne or balancing the ball on one foot. Fast forward a few hundred years to the Tang Dynasty, which started in the early 600s AD, and we see more changes in the game. First of all, the sport became less of a military exercise and more of a form of primarily entertainment. Also, the ball itself changed. Before the Tang Dynasty, the ball used in Cuju had a solid core stuffed with animal hair and feathers. But in the Tang Dynasty, we start seeing balls with hollow cores filled with air. Oh, and by the way, I found sources that said that before the balls filled with hair and fur, there's some evidence suggesting that they used stone balls, which, yeah, ouch. Another change in the game that appeared around the Tang Dynasty was a new format of the game that involved just one goal. It's a circle about a foot in diameter called an eye. The eye would be mounted on top of a 10-foot pole. Two teams of about 12 to 16 people each would line up on opposite sides. One team would initiate, and its players would pass the ball to each other with the aim of having it end up on the feet of the second in command, who would then pass it to the team captain, who would try to kick it through the eye. And then the other team will get its turn. The winners got fabulous prizes, and the losers literally got whipped and were forced to put makeup powder on their faces. How's that for a motivation? Oh, and by the way, Cuju was mentioned in the works of many a Tang Dynasty poet, including names like Li Bai and Du Fu, who are basically 1A and 1B on any list of all-time great Chinese poets. Of course, Li Bai was writing about Cuju in a rather critical manner, complaining about the aristocracy's infatuation with the game at the expense of important state affairs. But hey, at least that also tells us that the aristocracy was indeed obsessed with the game. Moving along, by the time we get to the Song Dynasty, which started in the 900s, the game had become even more widespread across all levels of society, and as we see in the water margin, everyone from royalty to street rats like Gao Qiu played the game. We have pictures of the founder of the Song Dynasty balling with some of his kin, as well as commoners playing Cuju with each other. During the Song Dynasty, the game itself continued to evolve. They stopped using goals again. Instead, you would have anywhere from a single player to a dozen or more arranged in a circle, and each person would show off their fanciest moves with the ball without dropping it. That's why in the water margin, it impressed the future emperor greatly when Gao Qiu was said to be able to control the ball as if it were glued to him. So I guess Cuju was more like hacky sack by this point. Hacky sacking your way to high government office. How's that for an unconventional career path? There was something else of note that developed during the Song Dynasty. In the novel, when the future emperor told Gao Qiu to join him for a game, the emperor mentioned that they were playing in the Clouds High League. So I want to talk about what that is exactly. The Clouds High League was basically a nationwide Cuju association with local chapters everywhere, and the strongest chapter was, not surprisingly, in the capital. To join the league, you have to pass a skills test, but once you've passed that test, you can play in any local chapters around the country for free. Players in the league were divided into different tiers depending on their skill levels, and women were also allowed to join the league. In fact, for much of the history of Cuju, it seemed that society had no qualms about women playing the game. As early as the Han Dynasty, there was evidence that women were already playing it, and that only increased during the Tang and the Song, as well as the subsequent Yuan Dynasty. In fact, during the Yuan Dynasty, female Cuju performers were apparently quite the entertainment draw. However, I should note that the Clouds High League, as it is mentioned in the novel, is an anachronism. The novel is set in the Northern Song Dynasty, but according to the sources I found, the Clouds High League did not come into being until the Southern Song Dynasty, which was the successor to the Northern Song. But details. The game of Cuju continued to thrive after the fall of the Song dynasty. It became even more popular under Mongol rule during the Yuan dynasty, and songs from that period make frequent mentions of civilians playing the game. By the time of the Ming dynasty, which followed the Yuan in the mid-1300s, Cuju was more popular than ever, and that's when it became too popular for its own good. Apparently, a huge chunk of the aristocracy were so addicted to the game that they were neglecting their government duties, and at the same time, brothels began using Cuju to draw customers, capitalizing on the popularity of the game with men. And that gave the game a rather seedy reputation. So the first emperor of the Ming dynasty banned government officials and guards from playing Cuju on the penalty of having their feet amputated. He did not, however, ban brothels from using Cuju to draw customers. During my research, when I came across this tidbit about the decline of Cuju's reputation, it occurred to me that this was also around the time when Shinai An supposedly wrote the novel, and I can't help but wonder how much that affected the way Gao Qiu was depicted in the book. Was the emphasis on his Cuju skills an attempt to further denigrate his character, given the game's seedy reputation at the time? When we roll into China's final dynasty, the Qing, the ruling Manchus pretty much just banned Cuju outright to prevent their own officials from becoming obsessed with it, and that led to the dramatic decline of the game, and there were very few mentions of it in written records from that era. I did come across one interesting thing though. Apparently the Manchus at some point combined Cuju with their love of skating and created something described as Cuju on ice, and I just cannot see how that ends in anything less than comedy and bruised bottoms. So that's a brief overview of the history of Cuju. Much beloved, much scorned, and at least in the water margin, a feasible means of career advancement. I hope you enjoyed this supplemental episode, and I'll see you next time on the Water Margin Podcast. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Water Margin Podcast. This is episode 5. Last time, we were introduced to Shi Jin, who, thanks to his tattoos, had the moniker Nine Dragons. He honed his fighting skills under the tutelage of Wang Jin, the former drill instructor of the Imperial Guards. After Wang Jin left and his father died, Shi Jin became the head of his household. Then, he caught wind of a group of bandits from nearby Huayin Mountain who were probably going to start coming around his village asking to borrow his stuff, so he got his fellow villagers to start preparing for that eventuality. Sure enough, pretty soon, one of the bandit chieftains, Chen Da, aka the Stream Leaping Tiger,